Well, welcome back, folks. We have some exciting things that we still need to study about Revelation chapter 12. And then we are going to get into Revelation chapter 13. Very exciting chapter. It'll take us at least a couple of sessions, perhaps a little bit more, to deal with Revelation 13, 1 through 10. And then it's going to take us 2 or 3 sessions to deal with the second beast of Revelation 13, the beast that rises from the earth that has 2 horns like a lamb and ends up speaking like a dragon. So we have a lot of study ahead of us. I trust that what we've studied so far has made sense. It's been exciting to know that the Adventist Church, folks, has the correct biblical prophetic scenario. There's no doubt about it when you look at the entire message of the Adventist Church. Our method is vital to our message and our mission. If we ever forget our prophetic method, we have no reason to exist as a church. And so it's kind of distressing to see that there's not much prophecy being preached these days in the Adventist Church. Okay, let's go back to our material. Well, we are now on page 43 of the material. And here's the question. You have an Old Testament Elijah, which is literal and local. Then you have John the Baptist, who is the New Testament Elijah, and that's a partial fulfillment. And then the prophecy of Malachi chapter 4 says that God is going to send Elijah before the great and terrible day of the Lord. But then we noticed in our last study that you have the Elijah during the 1260 years. So the question is, how is it that you have this Elijah during the 1260 years? How can that be the Elijah that comes immediately before the terrible day of the Lord, the dreadful day of the Lord? The answer is, folks, that when the papacy's deadly wound is healed, what began during the 1260 years will conclude. The only difference is that there has been a respite or a period that the deadly wound has been in place. In other words, if this prophecy had been fulfilled consecutively, if there had not been a deadly wound, then you would have had the dreadful and terrible day of the Lord. But because you have this parenthesis where there is a cessation of persecution, then when the deadly wound is healed, the Elijah prophecy will pick up again. Are you understanding what I'm saying? Now, let's pursue that. Let's go to Revelation chapter 6, verses 9 through 11. This is the 5th seal. This is the reaction to the period of papal persecution. And I want you to notice what this passage says. It says, when he opened the 5th seal, I saw under the altar the souls of those who have been slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. Now, don't get all hung up over the souls that are crying out under the altar. The word soul in the New Testament actually is the word suche, and it is translated many times life. And the life of the man is in his what? According to the Bible. The life of the person is in the blood. So when it says here that the souls are crying out from under the altar, it means that the blood of the martyrs is crying out for justice because they've been slain mercilessly. Probably the best illustration of this is in the story of Cain and Abel. When Cain killed his brother, God asked Cain, where is your brother? And he said, I don't know where my brother is. I'm not my brother's keeper. And then God said, the blood of your brother Abel cries to me from the ground. So it's the blood that's crying out for justice. The soul, for example, in the New Testament where it says that Herod wanted to seek the death of Jesus, it says that Herod was going to seek his life to kill him. Well, the word life there is the same word for soul that we find here. So in other words, the soul is basically the person, the life of the person. So anyway, you have these martyrs that are crying from under the altar with a loud voice. These are the martyrs that have been slain during the period of papal supremacy. And what are they crying out? How long, O Lord, holy and true, until you judge and avenge our blood on those who dwell on the earth? So the martyrs of the 1260 years, what are they doing? They're crying out for justice. They're saying, how long, Lord, are you going to wait to judge and avenge our blood on those who are shedding our blood on the earth? Now notice the answer. Verse 11. Then a white robe was given to each of them. In other words, God says to them, you don't have to worry. The robe is yours. You're safe. So it says a white robe was given to them, and it was said to them that they should what? That they should rest a little while longer. What does that mean, that they should rest a little while longer? They're going to be dead, right? They're going to rest in the grave for a little while longer. But now notice there's going to be a second group of martyrs. So it says that they should rest a little while longer until both the number of their fellow servants and their brethren who would be killed as they were was completed. How many periods of persecution? 2. The martyrs of the past are crying out for justice. God says, you will be judged and avenged when the number of the martyrs is complete. When is the other group of martyrs going to be killed? Shortly before the time of trouble, shortly before the door of probation closes in what is known as the little time of trouble. Will there be martyrs that did not worship the beast, his image, or his mark? Read Revelation 20, verse 4. It speaks about those who were beheaded because they did not worship the beast, his image, or his mark. So there will be martyrs shortly before the close of probation, when the Sunday law is proposed. But after the close of probation, the number of martyrs will be complete, and there will be no more martyrs during the great time of trouble after the close of probation. So because, I want you to notice this, so because you have these 2 periods, the martyrs of the past that were slain by the papacy, and the wound is going to be healed, and she's going to start where she left off, in the same manner, Elijah has 2 stages. The Elijah that proclaimed the message during the 1260 years, and the Elijah that will proclaim the message when Jezebel resurrects. Are you with me? Now, let's continue here. The harlot has 2 stages of existence. And so Elijah, the children, and Ahab must also have 2 stages of existence. Jezebel was cast into her sickbed, along with those who committed fornication with her in the great tribulation of the French Revolution. Revelation 2:22 says as much. Indeed, I will cast her into a sickbed, and those who commit adultery with her into great tribulation, unless they repent of their deeds. So in the end time, Elijah broadens from Israel to Western Europe during the 1260 years, to where? To the world at the end of time. Now, let's take a look at Revelation chapter 12 and verse 16 and 17. After the 3.5 times, God would raise up a people who have certain characteristics. They would keep the commandments of God, and they would have the gift of prophecy. They would preach true worship to the Creator. They would restore the everlasting gospel. They would denounce Babylon, and they would lead the world to take a stand for the seal of God or for the mark of the beast. Does this sound like end time Elijah? This is the end time Elijah. And Revelation 18 verse 1 says that the whole world will be illuminated by the glory of this angel. It makes the third angel's message a loud cry. Get out of there. Don't worship the beast, his image, or receive the mark, because if you do, the wrath of God will fall upon you. It's God's last message to the world. And that is the message of the end time Elijah. Now let's notice Revelation 12, verses 15 and 16. So the serpent, the dragon, spewed water out of his mouth, singular, like a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away by the flood. But now something comes to the rescue. Not someone, but something comes to the rescue. It says in verse 16, but the earth helped the woman. So is the earth a helpful place to the persecuted church? Yes. The earth helped the woman. And the earth opened its mouth and swallowed up the flood, which the dragon had spewed out of his mouth. So now the earth helps the woman. Now let's notice, once again, the literary structure of Revelation 12. I have it summarized here in your syllabus so that we can see the sequence. We've covered a lot of material, and so you might not have caught all of the sequence of events that we have in this chapter. So let's review them. First of all, do we have flashbacks to heaven in Revelation 12? Takes us back to the beginning of the controversy. Then do we have Israel in the Old Testament? Yes, it's denoted by the woman who has a crown with 12 stars. The child has not been born yet, so it must be the Old Testament church. Then you have what? The birth of the child. And then you have, it says, he was caught up to God and to his throne. You have the ascension of Jesus. And then you have the victory celebration in heaven. Remember Revelation 12, verse 12? You have the victory celebration in heaven. And then what does the dragon do? He says, well, the child is out of my hands. He's gone. He beat me. So he says, I'll take second best now. So what does he do? He goes after the woman. And how long does he go after the woman? For 1,260 years. But then it says that when the 1,260 years are transpiring and persecution of the woman is going on, the earth comes to the rescue. Are you following me? It says the earth helped the woman and swallowed up the waters. Is that the end of the story? No, because we are told in verse 17 that the dragon will resurrect to power again. Are you with me or not? Because Revelation chapter 12, 17, you know the verse. It says, then the dragon was enraged with the woman. Why does the dragon become enraged with the woman? In the context. Because the earth helped the woman. Is that making sense? The earth helps the woman, swallows up the waters of persecution, and you think the dragon says, oh, that's fine, I'm okay with that. No. He hates the fact that persecution of the woman has come to an end. So is he going to launch a final persecution? And listen carefully. That final persecution is described in all of chapter 13. Primarily the last half of chapter 13. Is the structure important? It's vital. Now, we need to identify who the dragon is. You say, well, we know what the dragon is. Dragon represents Satan. Yes, but there's more to the story. Now, let's notice this in the next section of our syllabus. Though not directly called a dragon in Daniel 7, the fourth beast is nevertheless a dragon, which represents the Roman Empire. But Revelation 12 amplifies the meaning of Daniel chapter 7 by explaining that the power behind the nondescript beast of Daniel 7 was Satan. So in Daniel chapter 7, this dragon-like beast represents the Roman Empire because all of the beasts represent empires. But Revelation 12 takes you behind the scenes. It says, listen, behind this dragon beast is who? The dragon, the ancient serpent, the devil and Satan is behind this system. Now, in Daniel 7, the nondescript beast, that is this dragon-like beast, then sprouts what? A little horn that persecutes the saints for 1,260 years. We know for a fact that the little horn is what? Roman. Why? Because it rises from the head of the fourth beast and among its 10 horns. But Revelation 12 takes us behind the scenes to show us that the real power behind the little horn's work during the 1,260 years, Papal Rome, was the dragon. Are you following me? I'm going to make a very important point here. Thus Satan persecuted the woman through the instrumentality of what? Of Rome. This is the reason we are told in Revelation 13, verse 2, that the dragon gave his seat, authority, and power to the beast. So the beast operates by the power of whom? Of the dragon. So what does the dragon represent? The dragon represents pagan Rome. Then Papal Rome continues exercising the authority of what? The dragon. But now there's an additional point, which is very important. But we are also told that after a period of respite, The dragon will persecute the remnant at the end of time. It is the same dragon that persecuted the child and the woman, and therefore it must represent Satan working through Rome. And this is a point that has been missed. Revelation 13:11, when it says that this beast from the earth speaks like a dragon, it's not only saying it speaks like Satan, but it speaks like Rome. Because the dragon is Satan working through Rome. He worked through Rome to try and slay the male child. He worked through Rome during the period of the papacy. And if the end time beast is going to speak like a dragon, it means that it's going to speak like Papal Rome. Are you following me? By the way, you know that everything that the beast from the earth, we're going to see this, everything that the beast from the earth does, he does to please the first beast. It appears that the only reason for his existence is to restore power to the first beast. You read in Revelation chapter 13, it says that he exercises all the authority of the first beast. He commands the whole world to worship the first beast. Everything he does is in the presence of the first beast. He makes an image of the first beast. He imposes the mark of the first beast. Somehow I think that this beast has something to do with the first one. And we've already identified the first beast as Papal Rome. So the United States is going to speak like a dragon. It means that the United States is going to speak like what? It's going to speak like Rome. Not only like Satan. Satan working through who? Satan working through Rome. Now let's continue here. To the next page, page 45. In all stages, it is Satan working through Rome. The dragon persecutes the child, then hands off the baton to the beast. Then after a period of respite, the beast from the earth speaks like a dragon. Notice that Ellen White had this very clear. You know, people are critical of Ellen White. And I find that there are two kinds of people that criticize Ellen White. Number one, those who never read Ellen White. And number two, those who read her with the purpose of criticizing. And if you are in either one of those groups, you've lost a huge blessing. Because even things in the writings of Ellen White that appear to be contradictory, they're not contradictions at all. They're just contradictions in our brains. When you really look at everything she says. You know, you look at the Bible, it would appear sometimes that the Bible is in contradiction, but it's not when you study carefully. Let me give you one example. How did the life of Judas end? Well, you read the book of Acts, it says he fell headlong and his belly exploded and his innards came out. You read the Gospels that said he went and hung himself. So some scholars say, see, the Bible contradicts itself. Ellen White puts them together in a beautiful way. She says that Judas was the heaviest of the apostles. And you know, he went up a tree and you know, he put the rope around a branch of a tree and then he jumped, you know, to hang himself. But he was so heavy and the branch broke and he fell headlong and his belly exploded and his innards came out. So the contradiction is only in our pea brains, if you please. The Bible does not have contradictions. Neither does the spirit of prophecy. When you study everything that Ellen White had to say, it is amazing what this woman did through the power of the Holy Spirit. I stand amazed every day because I read her with an open mind and an open heart. Notice what she had to say about these two stages of Rome. God's word has given warning of the impending danger. Let this be unheeded, and the Protestant world will learn what the purposes of Rome really are, only when it is too late to escape the snare. Are you catching the picture? Protestants don't have the foggiest idea that they're playing with fire. When they fall in love with the papacy, and Rick Warren and Joel Osteen and all these television evangelists, you know, go to the Vatican, they're wowed by what Francis I is saying. They don't have the foggiest idea that they're playing with fire because they don't understand prophecy. Do you think that they would want anything to do with this system if they understood what we are studying here? Absolutely not. Who's going to tell them? We are. We have to tell people. And we become so politically correct in the church. Oh, no, don't say anything about the papacy. They might be offended. And so you'll offend them right into hell. Sorry. Okay. God's word has given warning of the impending danger. Let this be unheeded, and the Protestant world will learn what the purposes of Rome really are only when it is too late to escape the snare. And then she speaks about the papacy. She is silently growing into power. Wow, she said that back then. What would she say now? Her doctrines are exerting their influence. Where? In legislative halls, in the churches, and in the hearts of men. She is piling up her lofty and massive structures in the secret recesses of which her former persecutions will be repeated. So is the papacy going to have another stage? Is Jezebel going to have another stage? So is Elijah going to have another stage? Yes. See? When the Jezebel has two stages, Elijah has two stages. She continues saying, stealthily and unsuspectedly, she is strengthening her forces to further her own ends when the time shall come for her to strike. What is it that strikes? A serpent. You know, Ellen White gives the best description of the papacy that I've ever seen. She says, behind the variable appearance of the chameleon is the invariable venom of the serpent. She continues writing, all that she desires is vantage ground, and this is already being given her. We shall soon see and feel what the purpose of the Roman element is. Remember we read that, Roman element? That's the church using what? The power of the state. We shall soon see, she says, we shall soon see and shall feel what the purpose of the Roman element is. Whoever shall believe and obey the word of God will thereby incur reproach and persecution. So what must the Roman element be? It must be the papacy joining the civil power to persecute, as we have studied. Here's another statement, Last Day Events, page 381. By this first beast, Revelation 13, 1 through 10, is represented the Roman Church, an ecclesiastical body clothed with civil power, having authority to punish all dissenters. The image to the beast represents another religious body clothed with similar powers, because it's an image, folks. The formation of this image is the work of that beast, whose peaceful rise and mild professions render it so striking a symbol of the United States. Here is to be found an image of the papacy. Are these prophecies making sense? Now let's continue. What came to the rescue of the woman who was being persecuted in Europe during the 1260 years? The earth must refer to a different place, because all of the beasts of Daniel 7 came from where? From the sea, including the fourth beast, or the dragon-like beast. What is represented by the earth? It represents the territory of what? Of the United States. Now, listen carefully to what I'm going to say. In Revelation 12, you still don't have the United States. You have the territory of the United States. In Revelation 13, you have a beast that rises from the earth in that territory. That's the establishment of the nation of the United States. Are you with me? So notice once again, in our syllabus, what is represented by the earth? It represents the territory of the United States. At this point, the nation had not yet come forth from the earth. The territory provided what? Refuge for the woman, beginning when? In 1620. And the nation later arose from this territory around 1798. When the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the Bill of Rights were approved, then you have the nation being established. And it rises in the same territory that provided what? That provided refuge for God's people. Are you with me? In Revelation 12, 13 through 15, we find a description of the person. This is a very important point, and I'm going to show you how Ellen White was so right in the order of events that she presents in Great Controversy. In Revelation 12, 13 through 15, we find a description of the persecution of the woman by the dragon for 1,260 years. Then in verse 16, you have the earth helping the woman. The earth helps the woman before the 1,260 years come to an end. Correct? If you study the sequence. How do we know this? The answer is by the sequence of events in Great Controversy. In Great Controversy, page 265, Ellen White begins the chapter on the French Revolution, which comes at the very end of the 1,260-year period. But in the very next chapter, notice this, in the very next chapter, Ellen White goes back in time to describe how the territory of the United States provided refuge for those who were persecuted in Europe. She describes the Pilgrim Fathers. So why would she go in the chapter on the French Revolution? She's talking about the 1,260 years and the deadly wound. And then in the very next chapter, she goes back to the colonial period. Because the book of Revelation does that. It says the earth helps the woman, and then the 1,260 years come to an end. Are you following me? Interesting that Ellen White would follow the same kind of idea that you have in the text of the book of Revelation. Now, let's go to the next page, page 46. Page 46, where Ellen White clearly explains that the 42 months, 1,260 days represent the same period. Some people are trying to reinterpret this as literal time. What they do is they ruin the real interpretation and meaning of the text by reapplying this. It says the periods here mentioned, 42 months and 1,260 days, are the same, alike representing the time in which the Church of Christ was to suffer oppression from Rome. The 1,260 years of papal supremacy began in 538 AD and would therefore terminate in 1798. At that time, a French army entered Rome and made the Pope a prisoner, and he died in exile. Though a new Pope was soon afterward elected, the papal hierarchy has never since been able to wield the power which it before possessed. Now, notice this statement in Great Controversy, page 292. See, this passage that I just read is from the chapter, The Bible and the French Revolution. She's talking about the 1,260 years, right? But now, she's going to go back in the previous chapter to the colonial period. Notice what we find in Great Controversy, page 292. Actually, 292. It was their desire for liberty of conscience that inspired the pilgrims to what? To brave the perils of the long journey across the sea, to endure the hardships and dangers of the wilderness, and with God's blessing to lay where? On the shores of America, the foundation of a mighty nation. And by the way, the chapter on the French Revolution begins immediately before this. So Ellen White is going back to speak about the colonial period after she describes the 1,260 years and the French Revolution ending the 1,260 years. Now, it was from persecution by the dragon that the woman escaped. This does not mean that during the colonial period, religious liberty was always respected, because you know that's not the case. There was religious persecution in the colonial period, but it was not the dragon who was doing the persecuting. In fact, the colonists were very suspicious of the papacy. So the persecution in the colonial period has nothing to do with the papacy. In Great Controversy, page 440, Ellen White had this to say: what nation of the New World was in 1798 rising into power, giving promise of strength and greatness, and attracting the attention of the world? The application of the symbol admits of no question. One nation and only one meets the specification of this prophecy. It points unmistakably to the United States of America. Again and again, the thought, almost the exact words of the sacred writer, has been unconsciously employed by the orator and the historian in describing the rise and growth of this nation. The beast was seen coming out of the earth. And according to the translators, the word here rendered coming up literally signifies to grow or spring up as a plant. In other words, the nation was just beginning at this point. And as we have seen, the nation must arise in territory previously unoccupied. A prominent writer describing the rise of the United States speaks of the mystery of her coming forth from vacancy and says, like a silent seed, we grew into an empire. And so Ellen White continues commenting here. A European journal in 1850 spoke of the United States as a wonderful empire which was emerging and amid the silence of the earth, daily adding to its power and pride. So what is the earth that helped the woman? Bottom line, what is the earth that helped the woman? It is the territory of the United States. Has the territory of the United States and the nation that arose there given us religious and civil liberty for the last couple of hundred years? Yes. Is that the end of the story? No. The Bible tells us in Revelation 12 and verse 17 that the dragon will persecute again. How will the dragon persecute again? Through the instrumentality of what? Of the very power that provided refuge for God's people. The earth helps a woman, and then it says that the dragon was enraged with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed. Is the earth helping the woman related in any way to the wrath of the dragon? Absolutely. It is the reason for the wrath of the dragon. Now, in Revelation 12, verse 17, we're told why the dragon hates the remnant of the woman's seed. Why is it? Because they keep the commandments of God, and they have what? The testimony of Jesus Christ. What is the testimony of Jesus Christ? The testimony of Jesus Christ is the spirit of prophecy, according to Revelation 19:10 and Revelation 22, verses 8 and 9. What are the commandments of God? The commandments of God are the 10 commandments. Now, you need to study this in your syllabus, beginning on page 47, all the way through page 56. I study the issue of what is meant by the commandments of God. And it's very clear in Scripture that the commandments of God that are referred to there are the 10 commandments. They keep the commandments. They keep the 10 commandments of God. It's not just a general statement that the devil's going to hate them because they didn't obey the command to go witness to all nations. It is definitely referring to the 10 commandments. So the devil is going to hate God's people because they keep God's commandments and because God's remnant has the spirit of prophecy. So was this clear? Our study of Revelation 12? Now we need to go Revelation chapter 13. Page 57 in our syllabus. Page 57 in our syllabus. We still have about 25 minutes to go through as much as we can of this. It's going to take us the rest of this day to finish this particular chapter. And as we have done in the past, we're going to follow this quite closely because there's a lot of very important information in here. In our class now, we are going to discuss the system that the Bible describes as the Antichrist. This system is referred to with different names. It's the clay in the feet of the image of Daniel 2. It is the little horn in Daniel 7 and 8. It is the beast in Revelation chapter 13. It is the abomination of desolation in Matthew chapter 24. It is the king of the north in Daniel 11. It is the harlot in Revelation 17. The man of sin in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. All of these refer to the same system, and different characteristics are given in different passages. Now, we are not going to talk about individuals in this system. We are going to talk about the corporate organizational system itself. There are many sincere, loving Christians in this system. In fact, Ellen White says that the majority of God's people are to be found in this system. that we're going to be talking about. Many of the people in this system love the Lord, and they serve God to the best of their ability according to the information that they have. But the system itself is corrupt, and its condition is irreversible. And you say, now how is it possible to make a distinction between a system and the individuals that are found within that system? Perhaps the best explanation is found in the case of the apostate Jewish church of the days of Christ. At that time, the corporate church, the ministers and the theologians in their majority had become corrupt. Would you agree with that? The governing Sanhedrin on several occasions pronounced the death sentence against Christ. The priesthood of the nation was corrupt. Jesus said that the nation was caught up in a rigid ritualism. Is the papacy characterized by a rigid ritualism? Did you see the funeral of John Paul II? Talk about ritualism. So Jesus said that the nation was caught up in a rigid ritualism while its heart was far away from the Lord. In the midst of this apostasy, Jesus came to attempt to bring about revival and reformation. Initially, Jesus came to the lost sheep of the house of Israel with the intention of calling people to experience a revival and reformation. His plan A was not for people to leave the Jewish denomination. But as time went by and the ministry of Jesus reached its climax, it became clear that the nation, that this apostate church had reached a point of infidel hardihood. And so finally Jesus, in Matthew 23, just a few days before his death, scathingly but lovingly rebuked these religious leaders, pronouncing the famous woes upon the scribes and the Pharisees. He used politically incorrect language, calling them hypocrites, murderers, generation of vipers, serpents, and asked them how they could escape the condemnation of hell. And then he said that the kingdom would be taken away from them and would be given to a nation or to a people that produces the fruits thereof. So might we safely say that the church of Christ's day was an apostate church? As a system, yes. But now notice, not all who belonged to the system were apostate. There were many sincere individuals who were faithful children of God within this apostate system. We think of people like the 11 apostles, excluding Judas. We think of the 12, we think of Nicodemus. We think of Joseph of Arimathea, of wise Gamaliel, and even of Saul of Tarsus, who had a sincere heart, but he was sincerely wrong. In fact, in Acts chapter 6 and verse 7, it says that when the apostles preached the message of Jesus, multitudes of people, even among the priests, embraced the faith and left the apostate system of Judaism. In fact, on the day of Pentecost, 3,000 Jews were baptized and became members of the church. You see, the system and those within the system are two different things. Many of the people who belong to the system are corrupt along with the system. But there are many within the system that are sincere. They love the Lord. They serve Him to the best of their ability. And they just don't have all of the light that God would want them to have. And it is our responsibility to share that light with them. So I believe that when we present this to people who are not Adventists, we need to preface this with this that I've done at the beginning. And that is, this is no reflection on you, a Roman Catholic. Because I believe that you, the individual Roman Catholic, I believe that you love Jesus, you're committed to Jesus. I believe that you serve Him to the best of your ability, but there's more than what you have seen. That way, you know, you're taking down the barrier. You don't want to say to the person, oh, you belong to the system of the Antichrist and you're apostate. That'll go over like a lead balloon. You know, we need to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Now let's notice Revelation 13 and verse 1. Then I stood on the sand of the sea and saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. Now let's interpret the symbols. We'll do this quickly. When we come to Revelation 17, we'll have more to say about the individual symbols. The sand of the sea. These beasts arise from where? From the sea. The turbulent, wind-tossed sea represents nations that are at war. And I hope that you'll read Isaiah 17, 12, and 13. It's the best text in the Bible that explains what is represented by the seas, what is represented by the waters. Even better than Revelation 17, verse 15. So the sea represents basically Asia and Europe. Where did the first 2 beasts of Daniel 7 arise? From the sea. And Babylon and Medo-Persia were in Asia. Where did the leopard and the dragon beast rise? From the sea. Let me ask you, where were Greece and Rome? In Europe. So the powers that rise from the sea are Asiatic powers and European powers. Now what about the 7 heads? The 7 heads on the single beast represent stages of the total career of the nations, beginning with Babylon and ending with the resurrected papacy. Are you understanding the point? When we get to Revelation 17, this will all be made clear. For example, while the leopard with 4 heads in Daniel 7 presents the total career of Greece without any time distinctions, Daniel 8, 3 through 5 and verse 20 expands upon Daniel 7 by explaining that Greece would be ruled first by a notable horn, then after the notable horn was broken, it would be followed by 4 horns. So does Daniel 8 amplify Daniel 7? Yeah, Daniel 7 gives you the total picture, total career. Then it goes on to specify and to give additional details. Now, what is represented by the 10 horns? The 10 horns are not dispersed among the 7 heads. The 10 horns are all on the same head. We're going to find that first of all they're on head number 5, then they're on head number 6, and finally they are on head number 7. When we deal with Revelation 17, we'll make this clear. And we are told that this power has a blasphemous name. And the name is related to a mysterious number that the beast has. The number 666. And we have a whole chapter in the syllabus on the number 666. So are you clear so far? We haven't looked at all of the explanations and all of the evidence for this, but you need to accept it by faith for now. And then you will accept it by sight later. But we need to understand the meaning of the symbols. Now, Revelation 13 clearly has Daniel 7 in its view, in its backdrop. Notice Revelation 13 and verse 2. You'll see the connection with Daniel 7 immediately. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. The dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. Where else do we find 4 beasts? Lion, bear, leopard, and dragon. In Daniel 7. This is as subtle as a freight train. That if you want to understand Revelation 13, you must go back where? To Daniel 7. See, the Old Testament is indispensable, folks. You cannot understand Revelation without understanding Daniel, without understanding other passages that we find in the Old Testament. Now, there's one detail which is very interesting and different between Revelation 13 and Daniel 7. And that is that in Daniel chapter 7, the beasts are in one order, and in Revelation they're in a reverse order. In Daniel, it's lion, bear, leopard, dragon. In Revelation, it's dragon, leopard, bear, lion. And so you say immediately, why do you have a reversal of the order of the beasts? Simply because Daniel is living in the period of the lion, and he's looking forward, whereas John is living in the period of the dragon, and he's looking backwards. This proves that the four beasts represent Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and the Roman Empire. Are you following me? Now, we're going to find that the fourth beast has four successive stages of existence. The fourth beast has four successive stages of existence. You say, well, what are those four stages? Well, the first stage is the Roman Empire without any divisions. Did the Roman Empire exist for a period of time without any divisions? Most of its career, it had no divisions. From 168 BC to 476 AD, it was the united Roman Empire. So the first stage of the fourth beast is the Roman Empire as an empire undivided, united. Let's read Daniel 7, verse 23. Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be a fourth kingdom on earth, which shall be different from all other kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, trample it, and break it in pieces. So what does the fourth beast represent? It represents a fourth what? A fourth kingdom. And in the sequence, this represents the Roman Empire. But now notice that this fourth beast is going to have a second stage of existence. Verse 24. Once again, let's begin at the beginning of verse 23. Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be a fourth kingdom on earth, which shall be different from all other kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, trample it, and break it in pieces. The 10 horns are what? 10 kings. By the way, kings and kingdoms are interchangeable. You're aware of that, right? In Daniel 2, God says to Nebuchadnezzar, you are the head of gold, but he says, after you will rise another kingdom. So the king represents the kingdom. And by the way, in Daniel chapter 7, it says that the four beasts are four kings. But then here it says that the fourth beast is the fourth kingdom. So kings and kingdoms are interchangeable. So when it says the 10 horns are 10 kings or kingdoms, now listen carefully, who shall arise from this kingdom? Does the kingdom have to exist in order for the 10 to rise from it? Yes, that's the second stage. See, the fourth beast governs for a while by itself. Then after a period, it sprouts 10 horns. And then we have a third stage. Daniel 7, 24 and 25. And another shall arise, what? After them. How many stages so far? 3. The fourth beast by itself. Then the beast sprouts 10 horns. The kingdom is divided. And then among the divisions rises what? A little horn. And notice what the little horn does. He shall be different from the first ones, and shall subdue 3 kings. He shall speak pompous words against the Most High. Pompous words are blasphemies, according to Revelation 17. Shall persecute the saints of the Most High, and shall intend to change times and law. Then the saints shall be given into his hand for a time, times, and the dividing of time. So how many stages do we have so far? 3. The dragon beast ruling by itself. Then after a period, the dragon beast sprouts 10 horns. And then among the 10 horns rises a little horn, and the little horn rules for time, times, and the dividing of time. We're going to leave the fourth stage to a little bit later after we look at the characteristics of the little horn. And we'll go through this quickly because I think we're all acquainted with the characteristics. They're presented in evangelistic meetings. Number 1, the little horn arose after the 10 had come up, right? When were the 10 horns complete? The 10 horns were complete in the year 476. The year 476 was the year when the last Western Roman emperor was deposed. Romulus Augustulus was his name. In other words, after that, there was no emperor in the Western Roman Empire because Constantine had moved the seat of the empire to Constantinople, Istanbul today. So basically, did the papacy rise to power after the Roman Empire had been divided? Yes or no? It's historically true. It's a fact that the papacy did arise after that point, in the year 538, officially. Number two, it arose among the 10. Is the papacy in Western Europe what used to be the Roman Empire? Absolutely. Number three, it rose from the head of the dragon, which means that it must be a continuation of what? Of Rome, because the dragon represents Rome. So if the little horn comes forth from the head of this dragon beast, it must be in some way what? Roman. Now I have a series of statements here. I don't know how many of these statements I should read because it's about 2.5 pages of statements where historians clearly say that the papacy is a continuation of Rome, but a different kind of Rome. You remember the feet of the image? Does Rome continue in the feet? Is it a different kind of Rome? Yes, because it's what kind of Rome? It's an amalgamated Rome. We don't dedicate much time to the feet of the image, do we? And we need to, because that is the foundation for the idea that the Rome that is going to arise in Daniel chapter 7 is an amalgamated Rome. It is a Rome that joins church with state. It continues the political power of the Roman Empire, but it adds an element which is what? The church, the power of the church. Let me just read 2 or 3 statements. This one is from Malachi Martin. Have you ever heard of him before? Listen to what he had to say. By the way, Malachi Martin makes some statements where he doesn't even realize that he's commenting on the papacy in Revelation 13. He doesn't realize it. But when you read carefully what he's saying he's giving it all up. But he doesn't, we'll notice that later. It says, within 3 centuries, the Roman Church had transformed the administrative organization of the Roman Empire into an ecclesiastical system of bishoprics, dioceses, monasteries, colonies, garrisons, schools, libraries, administrative centers, envoys, representatives, courts of justice, and a criminal system of intricate laws, all under the direct control of the Pope. So is he now controlling all of the civil organization of Rome? Had Rome been transformed? Was it still Rome? Of course it was. Now notice, his Roman palace, the Lateran, became the new Senate. The new senators were the cardinals. So does Rome continue? Malachi Martin was a Jesuit. Yeah. And I'll have more to say about him later. You know, he really was able to read the future in the light of the past. I'm not saying that he was a prophet, but he was able to see what was going to transpire with the Roman Catholic Church. Of course, he saw it positively. We look at it from the perspective of prophecy. He continues writing, the bishops who lived in Rome and the priests and deacons helped the Pope to administer this new imperium. What does the word imperium, what is that in English? His new empire. So did the papacy continue the Roman Empire under a new form? It morphed into something different, iron and clay. Notice this statement from Adolf Harnack, a liberal theologian, but he had some very interesting things to say about the Roman church. This is how it reads. The Roman church, in this way, privately pushed itself into the place of the Roman world empire, of which it is the actual what? Continuation. The empire has not perished, but only has undergone a transformation. Well, these historians, you know, they don't know that they're commenting on Revelation 13 and the iron and the clay and the feet of the image. And then he says, that is no mere clever remark, but the recognition of the true state of the matter historically, and the most appropriate and fruitful way of describing the character of this church. It still governs the nations. He's talking about the past now. It still governs the nations. It is a political creation, and as imposing as a world empire, because it is the continuation of the Roman Empire. The Pope, who calls himself King and Pontifex Maximus, is Caesar's successor. Is that clear? You want me to read the rest of them? Should we? This is not one historian. These are bunches of historians. Let's notice the next one. The empire was falling into decay. The barbarians knew that its life was failing, that the old organism was worn out, and they hastened to take possession of the remains. From every direction they came for the spoils. The Saxons and the Angles settled in Great Britain. The Franks invaded northern Gaul. The Visigoths made Spain and the regions south of the Loire their own. The Burgundians took possession of the upper valley of the Rhone. The Vandals made conquests in Africa. The Ostrogoths and Lombards were waiting for their turn to come. Among these new invaders, some were heretics and others were pagans. What is to become of the church? Are its days numbered? And is the empire to bring it down as its companion into an open tomb? No, the church will not descend into the tomb. It will survive the empire. It will have to pass through days of distress. It will witness calamity after calamity, ruins heaped upon ruins, talking about the barbarian invasions. But in the midst of the greatest sadness, it will receive precious consolations. One after another, these barbarian peoples will submit to its laws, the laws of the papacy, and will count it a glory to be the church's children. The frontiers of the church will be extended. Its institutions, for a moment shaken by the barbarians, will be consolidated, developed, and will adapt themselves to their surroundings. The papacy, most sorely tried of all, will make a new advance. At length, a second empire will arise. And of this empire, the Pope will be the master. More than this, he will be the master of Europe. He will dictate his orders to kings who will obey them. What do you think? Well, we're going to bring this to a conclusion now because time is up. But what we're going to do when we come back is finish reading these statements. I debated on whether to read them all because you have them written.
Visit secretsunsealed.org for annual class dates and topics. Anchor is a seminary-level course of study on the fundamentals of Seventh-day Adventist theology taught by Pastor Stephen Bohr and guest theologians. Seating is limited.